Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faerie Conclave. This is episode 75. I'm your host, Alec. My pronouns are he, him, and today I have a very special guest. It's Lynn Frank. Lynn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Hey, I'm Lynn Frank, and she, they, for pronouns. Episode 75? Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
3/4 of a decimal number favorite, like a 100 that some people might call attention to.
Totally. Yeah, that definitely means something. I'm not sure what it is,
sure.
but yeah, I don't know. I kind of just, the numbers come out and then at some point I realize how many there are, and I'm always surprised. So yeah, we made it to 75, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so
I'm honored to be the 75th.
Yes,
I don't know if I get like a coupon or an extra punch on my card.
Ooh,
or
yeah.
anything.
Yeah, I can get you like a free
special.
up to $5 coffee next time.
Nice. A foot long or something. A meatball sub. Okay.
Sounds good.
I'll take
Sounds
it.
good.
I'll take it. Yeah, for
Perfect.
sure. No, I'm doing well. I am happy summer is here. I know it won't matter to whoever is listening to this, wherever and whenever they're listening to it. But like summer's here for me, and that's always a good time in my life because life is easier during the middle of summer.
Yeah, I'm also a summer person. Our Australian viewers and listeners won't be super excited probably, but I am.
Right. And then it also means it's like Command Fest season, Commander people getting together despite COVID in the year of our Lord 2022. As we believe it's over, as everyone's still coming back from these Command Fests and posting their positive test results and their negative test results. But, I find that like it's great to get together with some people. I went to hang out in Milwaukee for Commandy Fest. Andy Zepke from Scrap Trawlers put together a small group of people in his local area, and then some of the people that join him on the Scrap Trawlers quite often or are very close friends came up. I got to hang out with Bobby Christine, and we got to just play some Commander for like 3 days in a basement, and the time went by so quick. Like it was so great to be around people and socialize, and then I'll be at Command Fest Bellevue in July. And I'm really excited about that because I get to hang out with Bobby Christine again. I get to hang out with Deanna, another guest on your show, and probably run into another one of your guests, a Will Help player, Joey from EDH Rec. I'm hoping to bump into him once, and a number of other people too that are in the on the Twitch sphere, the Twitch ball. I don't know, you get the Twitch universe or something.
Exactly.
Content creators. Yeah.
I love it. That sounds super fun. I would be so excited to see all of these people who I've interacted with only with their voices or like on Twitter or something. It'd be so cool to see all of them in person and play Magic and do things like that.
Right. Yeah, marvel at their 3D-ness, like how tall or short they're. There's that meme going around. It's like, how tall do you think I am? And then you kind of get that answered. I've worked remote for most of the last 6 years. Like we were talking before, you saying you work from home, I work from home, I work remote. And like I am, great to just be around people. I get so excited now because like I don't see a lot of other people. So when I do see people, I feel like a dog. When like their owner, their like caretaker comes home, and like I start wagging my tail. I just get kind of like that, just wagging my tail. I pee myself a little bit. I just get so excited, hanging out with people.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know what it is. Whenever I see people on YouTube, like the EDH Rec people, I just always imagine they're like at least 6 feet tall and are just, I'm gonna be like looking up at them when I see them in person. So that's just what I imagine from YouTubers in general.
So an actual physical sort of positioning of them, like being above.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Looking up to. Yeah. A
They
sort
have
of
that
metaphorical Yeah.
the YouTube like prowess going on that just
Sure.
adds something. There's something there.
There's definitely, I mean, there's an affect that like YouTube individuals or anyone that does performances, has to put on. And sometimes that's a grander version of themselves or a particular confident version or
True.
a angsty version, whatever it happens to be, that kind of works well, that sells or
Totally.
allows them to kind of like do their video, get it done. And I do love meeting the real people though sometimes, just kind of sitting there and hanging with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I went to Magic Fest Seattle in 2019 and saw the Loading Ready Run people, and just like
Yeah.
exactly what I was imagining. They are actually all like at least 6.5 feet tall. Like they're all really, really tall, Canadians that were just vibing.
Six
So
and a half feet tall. Yeah. They were like more like Vikings. They were
mm-hmm.
the Vikings that went to Canada. I met them at Penny Arcade
Ooh,
like years ago, like the second or third Penny Arcade before they were doing Magic content all the time. I don't remember
nice.
them 6.5 feet tall, but very close to that. I think Graham is like 6'9". He's
Yeah, right,
7'2",
exactly.
right? Yeah. They were all super fun. They were definitely fun. I love hanging out with people that love to improvise. So any and all people, Loading Ready Run are favorites of mine.
Yeah, mine too. I love the kind of like optimistic, upbeat energy that they have, and just kind of riffing and vibing off of each other. It's true.
What do you, what do you, what do you say to them? You know what I mean? Like, did you talk to them? Did you say anything to Graham or any other individuals, or do you just like run up and smile and wave and then ask for a selfie with them? Or
Pretty much the
what do
second
you?
one.
Okay.
I wasn't making any content or anything at the time. I was just there for to get some artist signatures and to buy stuff. So I kind of just came
Got
up and I
it.
was like, I'm a huge fan. I love all of you. Can I please buy a T-shirt? And that was pretty much it.
Oh, well, that's good. That's sweet. Yeah. I've wondered about that because, like, two things about me. I don't like to wait in line at buffets.
Mm,
And I have a hard time with the, like, stardom or the star power or that, like, what do you do? As in, like, I
yeah.
appreciate someone's content, but then when I see them in real life, I'm like, I don't know what I would say to them. And I don't oftentimes feel like, oh, I need a photo of them with me. I don't know if sometimes I do want some of their products or, like the things that
Yeah.
they're giving out, or I do want that. But then sometimes I just go, I don't know what I want to do with you. So usually sometimes you're just like, I just want you to like me. Will you just like me within about 15 seconds of us meeting
Right.
or something? And then I find that sometimes the best way to do that is to just kind of like be near the people but ignore them, or you know what I mean, not like, or not make it a big deal, which is hard sometimes, but
Yeah, it's
yeah.
true. I do love to be a fan of somebody. So yeah, I don't know what I would do. I think, especially now since I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of these people, just seeing them in person, I also would just be like, hi. I don't know what to say, but
Yeah,
hello.
yeah, right, exactly. It so reminds me of working for corporate culture,
mm,
in this day and age, for like the tech companies I work for. We would get together every year, have a big gathering of people of all across the company from all these different departments, but you're all kind of tangentially related.
yep.
And it feels almost like that idea. Like you'd see the CEO, or you'd see the person that you learned everything from, or you'd see the other team members that are, impactful, that got called out at some meeting that were, you watched so impressionable as part of the early onboarding. And then you get to see them and you're like, I don't know what to say to them, but I feel like I should talk to them. And I feel like I've gone through that process, like gone through it a little bit. And it's such an interesting feeling. I have
Yeah.
to think about that some more. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
How
that.
to talk to the people.
It's true. I'm also in a super corporate environment, so and I've been kind of surprised at a lot of things, like telling people to do things on Teams calls kind of lends itself a lot to asking people questions on a podcast. There's been a lot of kind of weird overlap there that I didn't expect between those two worlds.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I recently did a job interview. Unfortunately, I have to quit my part-time magic side gig, or
Oh no.
perhaps let it become more of a side gig,
Gotcha.
a tertiary gig.
Yep.
You know, as we all have so many jobs in this hustle culture.
Yep.
I actually, it's more like following what I want to do culture, I guess, is what I'm kind of trying to find, where it's
Okay.
burning. You know, where it's burning. Sometimes it's burning, and then I go see a doctor, and then sometimes it's burning, and I want to play some Magic or talk about Magic. So,
Right. Yep.
no, I don't think it's going anywhere, but it's definitely, I got to get a job. Oh, so I was on a job interview, and I wowed them with like my dual camera OBS knowledge. And so I have to say, doing podcasts, learning how to stream, really gets you a little bit I don't want to say ahead, but really put you in an informed position when it comes to like this new digital remote workforce. If you're part
Yeah.
of that experience, if you're fortunate to have like that, or maybe unfortunate, I don't know. I do sometimes wish I had an office. But I do like, I should say unfortunate. No, that's not true. I mean, I have the choice. Like, I could move to a big city and go to the office if I wanted to, but
Right.
not
Yeah.
for me. No, thank you. Not at this point.
Yep. Yeah. I feel the same way. I also get some funny questions sometimes when people see, that I'm not just using like the laptop cam. I have a 1080p camera, and like a big mic when I'm on a Teams call. Everyone else is kind of, all blurry and at a weird angle. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It definitely,
They're fine with it.
yeah. And
Usually.
it works,
fine.
but yeah, it is a little bit, you get a bit of a boost there, I think. People are like, oh wow, he really cares about this job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're kind of winning, you know, thinking about like, okay, so our work at one point, the previous job I was at during the pandemic, wanted to create a virtual event, and so they were looking for someone to, and I was on the marketing team, and they wanted to get some people that were inspiring for us to listen to, and so they got some of the cast of Hamilton on there, and like,
Whoa.
to talk, you know, the Broadway caster. Yeah, no, it was talk. It wasn't Lin-Manuel, but it was, you know, other individuals that took over or were part of the performance, or Thomas Jefferson on the first run, and then I can't remember the individuals. I apologize to those. But what was important was that they were on, and I was like, damn, they look so good. And a lot of them had like some great camera setups and other stuff. And then some of them were like, oh, they don't look, you know what I mean, bad camera setup. And you're like, who are they? You know what I mean? But like, my camera was like, I was like making sure after that, I was like, I'm going to turn my camera on. I'm going to put a little lip color on.
Yep.
I'm going to get the bisexual lighting going on. I'm going to make sure this is lit right so that everyone understands what's going on over here. So, you know, I got put on a nice blazer. You know, I got a little dressed up and all that stuff, and I've been playing with that, and I've been learning some tricks. My one suggestion is for online meetings is to have a light behind you and have a light on behind you that rotates through colors. I don't have one here on our call today, but like I've had it where the light rotates colors behind me on a chair. And it's nice because I can just sit there quietly and just watch, and everyone knows I'm still connected. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just like, if I'm just kind of sitting there and staring and listening, you know, people still know like, oh, you know, Lynn's there. She's paying attention. You know what I mean? She hasn't disconnected.
You've got like the movement going on, so people, people see that.
Right.
It's true.
But with the power and prowess of a 6'9" individual over the internet, you know what I mean? With, you know, so
exactly. Nobody really does. So it could be.
Yeah, nobody does. Yeah, exactly. By the way, I'm 5'8". I don't know if that makes a difference for this interview, whether there's a certain height of individual that must to ride this ride.
I was
Perhaps
actually
not. That would be ableist.
Thank you for getting to that right up at the top. No, just kidding. I appreciate it.
Good. Yeah, get it right out of the way. Rip the Band-Aid off.
I guess I didn't like fully introduce some of the Magic content that you create when at the top here, but You do a lot of Spelltable Commander, and you do a lot of YouTube and things like that. Would you like to give us a little bit more of a background on that and maybe some things you've got going on right now?
Yeah. I started playing Commander in August of 2021, so just last year, and
Nice.
then it was immediately onto Spelltable. That's where I went
Yeah.
and started hanging out on Discord, trying to find community and friends, and then found. Oh, I should say, Bobby Christine found me. I was being critical or like judgmental, or I was being adding to the discourse on Twitter of like with the magic sort of thought.
Yeah.
And then she found me, and it was
Cute.
actually I was watching a lot of the Twitter or Twitch, excuse me, streams for Commander, and I just noted how difficult it was for me to access what was going on, and
Mm.
so I started commenting on just like I think this is what would be necessary to make streams more accessible to individuals to watch for that to be more easily consumed. And that got a lot of attention from some creators, and that got me some invites.
Nice.
So I've mostly been a professional guest, as some people say, a guest on a lot of those. So you might see me on different Twitch channels for different content creators. But a lot of the time I'm spending it with Bobby Christine, working with her on Spell Fables, which is a recorded, edited game experience, Commander game experience, and that is on my YouTube currently, which I believe will be in the show notes. And
Yes, definitely.
then Bobby Christine and I also wanted to talk about our philosophies. So I'm trying to. There's a number of different questions and thoughts that we've shared, and so I've been wanting to help her get those thoughts out, and some of
Yeah.
my own thoughts out about like what we think is what the community could use, or what we see in the community, what we like in the community, because that's important to say. When the absence of something not being expressed allows for other voices to fill. So like a common topic that we'll discuss on that Check Your Bulk podcast, also on
Yep.
YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, those places. Oh no, wait, iMusic? Do they? No, they still call it iTunes. Well,
Yes.
we'll
I
we'll
do.
we'll talk about, yeah, right. It's still an iTunes. We'll talk about the importance of gameplay, flavor, texture, and sometimes financial um, power. Those discussions. We try to look at all those sort of aspects of Commander, and we're trying to explore some of those spaces that sometimes the language is always just like, I won this game, I won that game. And we're talking about other
Yeah.
ways that you might think about exploring the ways to describe your Commander games, to remember your Commander games, to wrap them up, and other kind of feelings of like just bringing more memorable moments to a ridiculous, there's like we'll put some card suggestions in there at the end, and some of them are great value, fun little cheapy powerful combo pieces, and then sometimes it's just like, this would be funny if this would bring the table together if those type of choices. So we try to keep it fun and flavorful. So
Yeah.
Twitter, YouTube, the iTunes, you can find me there talking and creating content. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, we'll definitely have links to all of that stuff down below. Yeah, and I really like all of that. I think what you've been doing as far as accessibility is really important. It's especially Commander as a format, like within Magic, is super inaccessible when you kind of get into it to new players and certain types of people who want to get into it. And a lot of content online just kind of assumes that a lot of the cards and a lot of the interactions and even just the rules, like things like that are often assumed. And it does make accessibility a very difficult thing for a lot of people. So yeah, I really like that you have put an emphasis on that.
Yeah, I'll include another little link, which was one that focuses on some of the things that I've suggested for YouTube, or sorry, not for YouTube, for YouTube, but for Twitch and any streamers, but also just individuals playing over Spelltable
Yeah.
for recorded content. I'll do zone cards. I'll put little calculated power and toughnesses for creatures. I'll put indicators of like upkeep triggers or combat triggers, things like that. Mana symbols to capture floating mana. I do a lot of these like little things because it's like I want people to be able to look at a battlefield, your battlefield,
Yeah.
and understand at a glance. I mean, that's kind of like my day-to-day job, like oftentimes making things easier for humans. So of course it bleeds over into this magic thing and the
Yeah.
thought of like, wow, it's really clear if I put this like placard out that says spell cast, and that's the spell being cast at the moment that's on the stack, and then I have a card that says exile, so which like exile that I can play or cast or are exiled forever or exile, what's my graveyard. And there are
Yeah.
some conventions, but I like focusing on some of these, being very explicit with labels on these fields and places. And I've gotten some people to change their ways, like put up little OBS digital labels of their spots, and so I feel like I'm making an impact in some way, like making some changes or having people consider what they like to change. So
Yeah, I think that's really important. I know most people have like a kind of a general spot where you put your deck in your graveyard, and that's kind of generally like understandable through the community. But when it comes to exile, it's kind of the Wild West. The stack doesn't. It's all over everyone's boards oftentimes. So
right.
yeah, that's
Right.
I think that's great. I think it's something that everyone should use. And yeah, it just makes it easier for the people watching the game, the people playing the game. I had kind of an awkward moment a couple weeks ago in a Spelltable game where there's just like a comprehension, like something that somebody missed that if they had been playing in person, you would have seen it, but over Spelltable, it was just like the blurry camera was like the glare was in the wrong spot and a card was missed. And it's always kind of awkward to kind of like try to back that up and be like, well, what do we do here? So yeah, trying to do anything we can to avoid situations like that. I think, it makes it easier for everyone involved. So yeah, thank you for doing all of that.
Yeah. Hey, I feel like I have to. It just feels like a personal thing. It's in all the games that I'm doing. I hope other people are interested in adopting some of those things. Some people are just surprised. Like before Infinite Tokens, were on the scene.
Yeah.
I got people were just using the backs of cards or just die or whatever. So it feels like people, in some cases, some people just haven't given much thought. They haven't like
Right.
They like it got the job done. And then, with Magic the game, there's so much going on in a Commander game. There's the social aspect of communicating with other humans. Along with that, like perhaps there's new humans in the group. Perhaps it's old friends and you're catching up. There's so much going on that sometimes like the tokens and the other things don't quite come up. And I think me coming in with like mostly just paying random people and pickup games on Discord servers, it made it so that like I don't, I'm talking a little bit to people, but I'm like, I just want to make sure it's clear what I'm doing over here, so I don't feel like I've cheated anybody or that I've been not clear. And I've wanted the same, like when I've been playing someone, I'm like, I'm about to cast a spell that needs to use your graveyard. Could you tell me a creature in your graveyard? And a person is withholding information, like there's just too many choices. And I'm like, could you tell me the best one? And he's like, well, I don't know. What is the best one? That depends on. And it's like, the one that might help me block your commander or, anyways, I played with a person that wasn't very forthright with like helping me. And it got, it made me cranky. I was like, we're over Spelltable. I can't, you know what I mean? Like as you're describing before, like I can't, if I was in person, I'd be like, let me see your graveyard. If you don't mind me touching your cards, I'll look through it, I'll grab one. But
right, yeah.
Over Spelltable in his dark little dungeon of a room, the troll stood over his cards and didn't let me know what was inside the deck or, the graveyard then. So
yeah, there's
all
definitely
because of them.
There's certain it's more like a communication thing. There are certain communication things you just have to do. My kind of local play groups that I play with all the time do that kind of to a fault. They're like, I'm like, what's the best thing in your graveyard that I could steal? And they're like, well, next turn I was going to do this, so you should probably steal this thing because it'll be the best against that. I'm like, okay, that's great. You didn't have to tell me all of that, but I appreciate it. I do appreciate it.
That is generous. That is very generous. That's very nice. Yeah. That shows a sign that people are enjoying playing with you. Maybe they enjoy the way you look when you're winning or something like that. Or they like the challenge.
Yeah, maybe it's more about that. Yeah, I don't know. Everyone I play with, I just like playing with like really kind people who are just kind of there to have a good time and see what happens and if their decks can do the thing. So yeah, it's kind of like throw everything you can at me and I'll even help you so that we can see what happens. Which I think is fun.
That's a common thing. I mean, the overkindness of telling what's in your hand doesn't sound like something I would associate with CDH, like competitive EDH.
Definitely.
But that collaborative way of solving or diffusing the bomb, which is like this person may be going off, even yourself. You know, sometimes you're there as a learning exercise. And I oftentimes, not even competitive EDH, regular old Magic with whatever casual EDH, you know, we're hanging out. Sometimes someone will get to a point where they're like, I can't assess the threat of the board. And then I usually, you know, I'll jump in if it's a good time to talk, tell people, you know, like describe what's going to happen, you know, and then describe the general function of the deck as I illustrated at the beginning, saying this is one of two combo pieces for the deck in which it runs. So, like, removing this at this time, you know, I don't have any tutors in the deck, but I could have the item, you know, that new other item, and I could win the game. So, you know, I usually try to describe the value of what it is when I'm, you know, to another person of, like, what I've got and what I perceive on other people's boards sometimes to help them to it. But I don't minimize my board state ever, you know what I mean? But I'll talk with uncertainty about whether I have the card in hand or not have the card in hand or, you know, some way to get it. So
yeah, we could do a whole podcast episode on this. I think it's so interesting, kind of the intricacies of the social aspect of especially in the situation you were talking about with an archenemy where everyone, the other three players are kind of trying to collaborate but also trying to win themselves. So like how much do you kind of like help them, but also you don't want to not represent your own board, and especially when it comes to combo pieces and things like that. I think it's really important to be to kind of, at least at the beginning of the game before you start, give context to like what combos are in there, because I don't remember all of the like 2-3 card combos and things like that. So yeah, things like that I think are super interesting to talk about. And I feel like each time a situation kind of like this comes up in a game, it's always different. Like you can't really prepare for it until you're there in the moment talking about what's happening.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I have some rules that I always I think I have 3 rules about Commander that I try to impart on people when I meet people, which is like, don't play with your food, you know, so if you have the win, play it.
I like it.
Because no one's going to feel well, you know, if you held on to it, then lost it to the wheel that I might play, or if you held it for 3 or 4 turns and then we all just kind of spun wheels while looking at you. Unless it was super fun. Anyways, don't play with your food. Like, don't annihilator for me, and then just leave me there with a 1 land or 1 creature. Just finish me off.
Yeah.
And it's my others is don't minimize board states. A lot of times I was playing and people would be like, "Oh, it's nothing to worry about," and I took them at face value. I was like, "Oh, okay, it's just a little old unicorn that can blink any one of my creatures," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll leave it." And then that unicorn went on to blink everything and like destroy my board and blink. You know, the unicorn wasn't the problem per se, but it was like the creature that entered the battlefield and destroyed permanents or something like that was killing me. So
yeah, anyways, I kind of like that. I like that rule too. It's kind of a general joke, I guess, in Commander to like play a card that everyone is scared of and just be like, oh no, like it's fine, you know, it's totally good.
Yeah,
I hear that all the time.
It's just chilling. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. And now I've learned like I'm gonna shoot it. You know what I mean? It's both
Mm-hmm.
the thing that like I'm supposed to be cool with, but I know it's a problem.
Yeah. It,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what it is too. Like I hear it. It's like I just played Emrakul. It's fine though. Like don't worry about it. I'm like I'm a little worried about it.
Fine. It's fine. Emrakul's like it's fine. I mean, unless you got instants, it's not fine, but it's fine.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
Oh man.
Um, yeah, that's true. I also have a don't apologize rule. I don't like when
Mm.
people apologize. Like their combo goes off, they play the Emrakul. I don't touch it. The next turn they hit me with it and then say sorry. I'm like, this is wrong. Just hit me with it and cackle maniacally,
Right.
but don't say sorry. Just hurt me. You know, just do it. That's the point of the game. You're
Yeah.
advancing the game state. I applaud you for doing so.
Yeah, I play with a lot of people who kind of feel bad for winning. So I always try to kind of hype them up when they're winning or when they're like going
Yeah.
off. I'm like, you're doing like this is great. I love watching this. They're like, I'm sorry this is
Yeah.
taking so long. Like I'm trying to work it out. I'm like, no. I'm enjoying the show. Like you do it. You got this. I love it. Yeah, and I feel like that kind of helps a lot because there is a little bit of I don't know what it is exactly, but I think it's pretty common. People just kind of feel bad for winning or being too far ahead or something like that. Most situations, I think, at least in kind of like your friendly local play groups, it's totally fine. You're kind of there to see who wins. So yeah, I like that rule too.
Right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about too. And I do that very similar behavior, which is like get excited for that person as they move into their combo or help them with their triggers, you know, as they do
Yeah.
it and not be like, I'm not going to show them I'm not going to tell them their triggers so that way
Right.
they won't get that extra 4 life. It's like, no, I want them to do it. I oftentimes like at commander games, it's like collaborative storytelling. So I oftentimes, again, like think of it as like we're ripping the mask off the boogeyman and maybe I'm the boogie, you know, or the, not the boogeyman, but like the, uh, Scooby Doo. I'm the Scooby Doo villain,
Mm.
and we're ripping the mask off me, and I'm
Yep.
excited for that moment because then I get to respond. As Bobby Christine will say, you know, like a heel. I sometimes also think about it like wrestling. You know, it's fun to have
Oh, nice,
characters.
yeah.
It's fun to think of yourself as like the villain that gets overthrown. You know, it's
Yep.
fun to. And I notice that the language when someone says like I'm sorry, sometimes the response from the other person is the only thing they can do is like I want to acknowledge you. So they say that's okay. Go ahead, get it. You know, so they first have to kind of like acknowledge the person and then pivot with like new energy towards that like belief
Yeah.
that it's like no, I really want you to win. And sometimes when you're tired, the only thing you can do is maybe as best as acknowledge the the thing, which doesn't really give the person the enthusiastic kind of like counter energy or counter
Right.
play that that they might play off of or sort of respond to. And then what happens is then they just kind of feel like, well, I do feel bad.
Yeah.
And then of course you have not a lot of energy or you're in a bad mood. You'd be like, well, you should be sorry. Like you're kind of cranky with them, or you might just sort of default cranky back with them. And so I don't know. It's difficult. I see it sometimes as just being like it's difficult when someone leads with that as like from a just like an I don't want to always call it like entertainment, but always like a give, like an offer, like an improv.
Right.
Thinking like it leaves me very little to I have to like again I have to use kind of twice the energy. I have to listen and then respond back with something positive, which is like no, I'm having fun. You know what I mean? Like I'm having a good time, which
Yeah.
can be difficult. I know that I
Yeah.
love it. I'll usually be like, I'm a villain. I want to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to die. No, I deserve it. You know what I mean? That's a great choice. I'm with you on that, like,
Yeah. And
positive response.
I totally I know like that exact situation you're describing has happened to me and probably a lot of people so many times, and it reminded me of I think it was from, or at least I saw it on a Commander Sphere episode, talking about like creating a story for the game, and that's kind of what I'm always thinking about is, well, if I became like the archenemy villain of this game and then I was taken down by something, it adds like a really cool story. Like you definitely don't need to apologize for creating a cool scenario and a story that we got to share together. So So yeah, don't need to apologize for it, especially if you needed to do it. And I think what people want to do is they want to like constantly check to make sure your power balances are matched up, because that's very like a pretty important thing, or that's emphasized. But I think replacing that with like a post-game discussion, like after everything's done, would be a little bit more helpful, and then you can shape future games, rather than like in the game you killed someone and you're like, I'm so sorry, we need to, like, I feel really bad about this. Like, no, we can work it out later. Like, keep going, you got it.
Right. That's something I noticed for me, for that creation of a story. I do love the command sphere. Commander sphere? I always forget if I should ER it.
Same.
Commander sphere. Commander sphere, that creation of a story post game. I thought about all that a lot, because you get to the end of the post game, and generally the post game plays out something like, person that won will oftentimes then go, yeah, I guess I got it. I got lucky when I got that tutor that I top deck, or after you wheeled, I did the. They kind of talk about, they either kind of partially credit the person, but then, or they're like, it didn't work so well, it didn't do as fast as I wanted. They kind of go through this kind of, I don't know, this downplaying of like their accomplishment in some way, instead of just laughing maniacally, and then. But they're still kind of centering, their conversation or their thoughts on who they are and their deck. And then the rest of us usually sit around going like, either, darn it, what was my next card? I would have got you if I got to play another turn, or sometimes just ask them questions about, like, no, you did, or tell them positive affirmation. No, you did great. That was a great game. Great. Everyone was great. That was great. I had a great time. Everyone got to do a thing. Everyone got to, you know what I mean? This kind of justifier sometimes with the like, we all got to do our thing, didn't we? We all did our thing. And I feel like that's the end of the game, kind of my comedic version of it. A gross exaggeration of it. But something that I've been doing to change that is during the post game, I'll go turn by turn if I can in my head. That's hard to do every time, but what I will do is, like, if someone countered some play of mine, or stopped a play, or wiped the board at a certain moment, or jumped in at the right moment, shuffled away my graveyard, I will make sure that I call attention to that in the post game. I'll offer to the person that did that to me. I said, that was a great play when you played Blessed Respite, and you fogged all the combat damage, and then you shuffled away all my creatures in my graveyard, because, you stopped the Eldrazi from smacking you from that other person, while preventing me from going off next turn, after you saw I did a Buried Alive the turn before that. That is something that I think giving that kind of like commending people on their judgment or their choice in play feels like something that I like to offer. And I'll oftentimes, it's easiest to do it from my perspective when I lost, right? Like when I'm the one that received the loss, because people might be sensitive to bring it up. Like, it was so good when I got your graveyard, wasn't it? It feels a little,
right.
A little sweaty. It feels a little sweaty. Get away with me, get away from me with that. But like, it feels great when the person that received that, incurred that, going to do that. And I sometimes, what I have found though, is I will start with that. I'll offer my own. And then I will like jump to other people's preps where they were foiled. You know what I mean? So it comes from
into it.
So I feel like I can kind of like, if I start with me, I can sometimes jump into other people and where they might have received the counter, where they were stopped, where they were almost the villain, where they were ... at that moment in the story. And that feels great. It feels fun to just kind of like reward those kind of big splashy plays, right? Because Commander's about big splashy plays. So I feel like it's incredibly important in the post game to review those big splashy plays, to give your kudos to the people that did something that stopped you.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It just adds so much positive reinforcement to the post-game discussion, which is really important, and it just feels good. Like, if I make so many mistakes in Commander games, and I always kind of remember when I make a play I shouldn't have, or like did something in the wrong order. So to have someone be like, hey, this thing you did in that game was like perfect timing and you killed it. That moment really, it slowed me down and it was great. I would love to hear that. That would be, yeah, it would make me feel a lot better about the game you just played, which is kind of, we're here to have a good time and feel good about it. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're so right about that, because we do spend a lot of our games with such uncertainty. A new deck, I don't know how it's going to play, the uncertainty of everything, the uncertainty of threat assessment with cards in hand. And it is nice to hear a little positive reinforcement at the end, to give that to other people. I think and it's so valuable because it perhaps counteracts that, what am I trying to say? The threat when someone's looking at your threats and they're saying, oh, it's no big deal, it's just an Emrakul. It's just chilling. They say that it's later. You could be like, it actually wasn't chilling as you saw. You know what I mean, or something. You can kind of maybe, you could kind of talk. At least maybe that can come back to that point where it's like, okay, I was lying about the Emrakul. I was trying to make sure it was chill, but Emrakul was killing it, and I got you all with it. So thanks.
Yeah. A little bit better energy, kind of like being proud of the Emrakul that you got out instead of trying to downplay it.
Right.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. That was a fantastic discussion. And I thought about a lot of stuff already, like that I want to keep talking about, but I asked you to come on here so that we could talk about one of your commander decks.
Yes.
So let's get into it. And I also just realized, I forgot to ask you about this beforehand, but I always do a community spotlight where we shout out somebody, a content creator or somebody in the community who we've been enjoying lately. And I totally forgot to ask you before we started recording if you had anyone in mind that you would like to shout out, but just kind of on the spot now, I guess. Is there somebody you would like to have for our community spotlight today?
Yes. ListenerAlters on Twitter makes ListenerElf, but ListenerAlters Anthony Birchie. ListenerElf, ELF. ListenerElf does some great altars. I met him in a game with Bobby Christine at the origin story of this deck that we're going to talk about today.
Ooh.
And we played a number of games together, and he was at the Commandy Fest. We just had a great time, and we've had a great time talking to one another, and he's made some great altars that he shares. He was on it with some woodblock prints before Neon Dynasty was dropping those beautiful lands. He's got some beautiful dual lands that he's been doing, and he's just doing a lot of making beautiful cards. It was great to see him at Commandy Fest because I ended up with some additional lovely cards from him, and he made a proxy for me, a little proxy card for Lynn, Cheerful Tormentor, the Curses Commander or Curses legendary creature. He made a version with me on the card itself, which was
that's good.
Egotistical and flattering and fun. So yeah.
Nice. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for altar artists for Magic. It's like it's unfathomable to me to be able to just like paint tiny paintings or do like digital work like that. It's always incredible. I love following and interacting with altar artists. I'm a big fan of the inner sleeves that replace your artwork. What is that? Altar sleeves. I'm a big fan of altar sleeves, and I think a lot of altar artists like to use altar sleeves as kind of a way to get their art out. So yeah, that's amazing. I will definitely add links to ListenerElf altars in the episode description below, so you can check it out too. Yeah, it's always difficult whether it disrupts the spell table. I always run that gamut, right? Talking about accessibility, I go, I love altars, I love different visualizations, but then I go, but am I hurting accessibility? I think commanders are okay. It feels like you've got the spell table, you've got your commander listed above, but
I love some altars, but I was like, but always accessibility, like at first in some ways
Yeah.
for me. But yeah, I love it. In person, I guess if I was doing more in person play, I'd do it. I'd
Yeah.
probably get some more of them. I like the
Yeah.
look of them though. Yeah, you're right.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was talking to I interviewed Dana from EDH Retcast, and he has his deck that we talked about was like 100%
Oh yeah.
altered, and
Yeah.
and we were kind of talking about how it's a little bit of a nightmare on Spelltable because you just can't, you have to like manually search the cards every time instead of clicking on them. So
Right.
definitely a little bit of a downside, but I just love that idea so much, to have a full deck like
Mm-hmm.
that. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
Anthony showed me a whole deck that he created, did borders and everything for it. It was
Wow.
gorgeous. Like he made everything look, samey, type of deal. Whatever
That's so
it
cool.
had a code in which it adhered to, and it is cool to like have that. I mean, I'm someone that's like, if I'm gonna play a deck where I search through the deck for cards, I'd like for my one basic land in the deck to have a special border, so I don't, I could find it right away,
Yeah.
or find some difference with it right away. And I definitely think that could be useful, to have someone that kind of alters a card for those little differences to help you play the game too.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and
I,
there's different ways you can experience it. Yeah.
that's really cool. You can, yeah, there are ways you can add the accessibility and yeah, shorten your tutoring time and things like that, through alters. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're always looking for those lands, that like
Mm-hmm.
a shock lands or whatever, I always thought like get an inner sleeve that's like white and bright or something, or you know what I mean, or something that
Yeah.
could possibly give you an easier look into, or like Anthony added, which was, oh, my camera's here, like
Ooh.
gold, oh, it's something
That's cool.
a gold rim to this lion's eye diamond that he
That's amazing.
handed to me for this proxy CDH deck. So, yeah,
Nice.
it's gorgeous.
I love
Yeah,
it.
so that's like, well, I know where it is. You know what I mean? Like, I'll know right away. But I was like, he could do that to
Yeah.
lands. He could do it to anything. So,
The possibilities are
yeah.
endless. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. Okay, yeah, so definitely, yeah, we'll have links down below, so check that out, and that'll be our community spotlight for the episode. Cool. Okay, yeah, let's get into it. So,
Yeah.
I am interviewing one of your commander decks today. Kind of. We have two lists basically, but I'm excited to talk about the commander. So yeah, let's kick it off. I'll start with the first question, which is, could you introduce us to the commander and what inspired you to build these decks?
Yeah. So the commander for both the decks is the same commander. It's the same legendary creature, and it's Florian, Voldaren Scion. One black and a red. Legendary creature. It's a vampire noble. It's got to be noble. I don't know why.
Yep.
But it's a 3/3 first strike. And really, this is the thing that drew me to the creature, is not the 3/3 first strike, but what I'm going to say now, which is at the beginning of your post combat main phase, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the total amount of life your opponents lost this turn.
So good.
And then you're going to exile one of those cards and put the rest on the bottom in a random order, but you get to play this exile card this turn, and this turn only. And I absolutely love Florian. And the reason I picked him was that right before this deck, I was playing a lot of Belby Corrupted Observer.
Ooh, yeah.
And she has a very similar post combat main phase trigger. So there was a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of overlap, but there were similarities between the two in terms of it being a triggered ability and it happening in the post combat main phase, and it being based on advancing the game state by doing damage to everybody. But what drew me to Florian and moved me away from Belby was the fact that I could play no tutors with Florian. So I had this moment where I was like, I am tired of everyone around me constantly just like buried alive, demonic tutor, Merchant Scroll. They were just like everybody was winning the game. It was a very high power place that it was playing in the kind of community. And
Gotcha.
so they were oftentimes, pulling together their combo by turn 5 or 6. And then, if not winning by that turn, or winning the next turn afterwards. And that felt pretty powerful. And so I was thinking, like, I'm tired of watching people shuffle. I'm tired of all these fetch lands cracking and all that, nonsense. I want a commander that I could possibly get the card selection I need without having to do tutoring. And Florian was right there. He came out in Midnight Hunt, appeared on game night, and what was probably even more influential was the 99, which is another channel that for a long time there was doing some recorded EDH content that Sun Rebel appeared on, and that's where I saw her a number of times. And I saw Patrick, who runs the 99, did a CDH deck with Florian in it. And I got to see what Florian would look like at a high level, got to see additional cards, got to see something besides Dragon's Approach. And there was such an overlap with what I had with Belby that I thought, I can do this. I can make this deck. And I did. And it started out as an answer to what felt like the meta. So it started out with first that no tutor rule. And then it started to turn into like, well, I'm tired of these like combo decks winning and all these other battle cruiser build a big army decks, like just building them. Like someone would have all these angels or elves or crawworms or whatever they were doing. They would have them all lined up there, but they would never attack because they didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And I thought, this is the deck that I'm going to put in Disrupt Decorum. This is the deck where I'm going to steal everyone's creatures and make them fight for me. I'm like, I'm going to take control, or, make a control deck in a way with Florian. I'm going to do those things. We'll get lots of cards, I wanted to continually put people in different scenarios, like challenging their creatures in other ways. So it was the perfect setup, and it really was based off that secondary that ability, the second sort of triggered ability of looking at the cards in their post combat, because I got to get away from tutors, and that made a big difference. I think I've changed my stances. So the reason why there's two decks is because one of them is a budget version, and then the other is the approaching or quickly approaching CDH, right? Like it started out as like not quite this way. It was still very powerful, but now I'm like, let's just put more gas on it. Let's just play all these cards. Let's put in an opposition agent. Let's remove some of these creature-based win strategies. Let's be a little bit more consistent, and let's play a few more proxies to win the game. So it's looking for more combo victories through Underworld Breaches, wheeling myself to fill the breach, to cast the mana producing Jessica's Will, to keep on going, and then Torment of Hailfire for 48 or something like that, from all the mana that I've made off of Waste Not, which is an enchantment that says like anytime any opponent discards, I get to benefit from it. So as long as I keep wheeling, I get a lot of mana, a lot of creatures, a lot of value while finishing up or tidying up the game.
I think it's really cool to have two deck lists for different situations, but both for the same commander that you enjoy playing. It's something I've thought a lot about, because I do like playing in very high power environments occasionally, where it's just like we're not being nice, everyone's just trying to win as fast as possible, and we're interacting with each other and removing things, and it's fun to do that. I like doing that sometimes, but then there are also the times where you're like, everyone's drinking White Claws and you don't necessarily want to like think that hard, and you just have and budget too is also a big thing. There is CDH is notoriously, unless you're proxying, it's harder to work with a budget there. So I think it's really cool to have two deck lists for a commander that you like. And I also love any excuse to get rid of tutors. So yeah, having this kind of like pretty absurd, and it almost like nears the power of a tutor effect, but you do have to put a lot of work into it to get it to work that way. So yeah, I like that a lot. You kind of you have to work for it.
Yeah, you got to do damage or cause loss of life. You know what I mean? Yeah. But there's ways to do it. There's lots of wonderful ways to do it. But yet, you do have to work a little bit to get to it, or somebody will strike Florian down, in combat, so you don't get the post-combat trigger. You can be left with holding the bag. You know what I mean? But even if you're holding the bag, it just meant like you did 12 damage or 16 damage to everybody. You just don't get the big look afterwards. But what's so funny that's surprising to me is every time when I play this commander, people will be like, oh, that's nice. They'll see the commander and they'll see me early turn kind of look at 3 cards, and then all of a sudden I'll cast Flame Rift and like each player takes 4 points of damage. So they're like, wow, you're going to look at 12. And then I, of course, attack with some other things on the turn. And so then I'm looking at 22 cards and they're like, wow, you're looking at 22 cards. You're picking 1 out of 22 cards, like, what are you going to get? And at that point, people tend to realize what's happening. And by then it's sometimes too late, or at least the deck has gotten better where it's like, yep, it's obviously too late. I've learned to stage it in a way where early turns, I'm just like getting ramp. You know what I mean? I'm like making sure I'm always just grabbing a land. I'll attack, don't play a land, attack, then exile a land for the turn. Then attack and then grab a signet, and then attack and then grab, one more powerful piece of, mechanical ramp of sorts, just some artifact, and then start the problems, then start grabbing some stuff that finishes out the game, but playing it as any sort of green player might, that's using adventurous impulse in a way. So I'm kind of adventurously impulsing my way through the deck, which is super fun.
One of my favorite things about that effect is you're still, like, the strategy, you're still dealing a ton of damage to your opponents, which gets you closer. Like, that's what you want to be doing in the game anyway. So it kind of rewards you for something that you already wanted to do, which I think is, it's really nice. It feels good. And I remember when Florian came out, and I was really excited about it because I have a Rakdos Lord of Riots deck, which is very similar. Like the kind of cards in the deck are very similar. Lots of like damage dealers and I play Flame Rift in that deck and things like that. So I've always enjoyed decks like that where you're just dealing tons of damage to your opponents and then profiting off of it in a huge way.
Right. Yeah. Like with in the higher powered deck, I'll play Neheb the Eternal, which of course has the very similar triggered ability going to post combat, but you gain red mana for each 1 life your opponent lost this turn. So they align perfectly in terms of like how they do and what they do. Because then you're like, wow, I get to look at 12 cards and I get 12 red mana to cast whatever I want from it. So and it's often that gets pretty game ending right there. That's the moment people get nervous. So I play the baby Neheb Dreadhorde champion in the budget version because I still love his effect. He still lets me cycle cards. He still lets me get some mana, but it's not quite as easy mode, like it's not as much as like I'm getting rewarded for doing the thing that I do. I have to work a little harder there.
Gotcha.
But I still like it. Yeah. And the difference between the two decks is that going into budget, I had to say goodbye to a few things, and to be honest, I could probably up the value of a number of cards in it, and the budget version could have been the $200 version of this one, before the 2 decks kind of differentiated. One was about 50 and the other one was about 250. And then there was all these people wanting to play CDH, and I thought I'll keep pushing this one, and I'll put some Magus of the Moon and stacks in there, and I'll put some more of the expensive artifacts and lands to help produce, more consistency and speed. So the original one has to change, though, because, when you look at budget, sometimes you have to say goodbye to certain cards. And so to say goodbye to certain cards for the sort of budget deck, I leaned differently into the discard feel So there's a lot more focus on blood, using like blood tokens and discards, and I think it's a fun change. I don't know if you've run into that situation where while I made two decks, when I made a budget version and tried to find lower price ones, I sometimes found cards that were like made it into the budget deck, played it a bunch of times, realized, wow, this should be part of like my stronger deck. You know, this should be part of my no holds barred deck. And that's happened. I've actually learned quite a bit from making the two separate decks, and it's actually caused me to see some better crossover synergy, flavor that happens between them. And I find that I ultimately change the more powerful, more expensive version of the deck while making a budget version of it, because I let go of some of those, like, I got to get the top card constraints and then actually see what happens. And honestly, with threat assessment sometimes being like, I know that proper noun killed me, I'm going to kill that proper noun, people sometimes become less scared of some other, creature you might play that's like an alternative that isn't quite as scary or isn't quite as obvious with what your goals are to win the game. So
yes, yeah, I've definitely found that, and it kind of goes the other way too. Like, there are a lot of times where I'll just throw expensive kind of staple-y cards in, just because it feels like something I'm supposed to do. And then, somebody will just blow up my, like, Phyrexian Arena or something. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. But, if I had, like, Protection Racket out instead, or, like, Dying to Serve, like another enchantment that people haven't really heard of, it still, like, helps the deck a lot. Yeah, maybe it wouldn't get targeted in such a way.
Yeah, that's a recent addition. You mentioned that Protection Racket. The cheaper deck also has like less care about some of the cards in it. And I was hot on that Protection Racket card because it says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal, like, going around to every one of your opponents, reveal cards from the top of your library and show off that card. And they can pay life, I think, to exile the card. But it's not just one card, it's one per person.
Yes.
So it starts to add up and people are like, no, I don't want you to draw that card. But the deck isn't built around high converted mana value cards. But, a land, they'll exile it, but they're going to start exiling 2 or 3 or 4, value cards. That's loss of life. Florian cares if you lost life, Right. So I'm willing to allow combo pieces in the budget deck to, like, be exiled forever for the chance at getting, a bigger dig. And it works really well with Sin Prodder, which does a very similar thing, except it goes to the graveyard, and the Keen Duelist, which also works at upkeep, which you kind of, I show me yours and you show me mine, like we show each other our cards and we compare damage. And those are like alternatives to, the Phyrexian Arenas, which I think is kind of a nice approach, because I don't put a Phyrexian Arena in here because I want to cause damage more than I really want to draw a card. So because I'll be able to get cards in post combat, in the post. Or Stormfist Crusader. Stormfist Crusader is one that's like a little Howling Mine. Everyone kind of loves the Howling Mine, so oftentimes they'll leave the Stormfist Crusader out there, even though it's you're getting to draw that second card on your turn, and everyone is taking a point of damage when that happens, which is like chef's kiss. So perfect.
Yeah, it's been such a good card in Rakdos as well, because I've had a lot of moments where I'll play it on turn 2 and people just like won't attack me because they want it to be alive. Like, they don't even want me to block with it and have it die. So some games I'll play in like turn 5 or 6, everyone has like 10 less life than I do just because they've been attacking each other and haven't been attacking me. I love that card so much. It's very, very good in things like this where you're fine giving them cards because they're losing life anyway.
Right. Yeah, you're getting a little more, it's that breaking parity, but it's not. I'm a big fan of that, understanding of the idea of like when you build a deck and you're hugging, as they call it, or slugging, that you are just breaking parity. And in this case, I think that's a good amount of breaking parity. Creators sometimes break parity a little too hard for me, but like this Stormfist Crusader breaks the parity in the right way, which is like, you're giving me a little for what I'm giving to you, right? Like, you're getting a card, I'm getting a card, but we're all taking a damage, right? Oh, I'm suffering too, but I get a little bit more Florians out, right? I get to look at 3 more cards, which can make a difference.
Yeah.
Can make a huge difference. And so I kind of was talking about looking at some of your questions. You know, it's like I have the goal of the deck is to usually steal everyone's creatures and kill them with it. Kill them with their own creatures. Goad everybody into killing themselves while I watch. Or, you know, it's Torment of Hailfire or Cut Ribbons, like the ribbons part of that dual, you know, that spell, the aftermath part, or the aftermath part. It's to cast that for a large X and just, you know, kill them all, like kill everybody else, like kill all your opponents after they've fought for a while, or, you know, everyone's kind of generally decided to lower their life totals at a similar pace or anything like that. Or perhaps that Stormfist Crusader has just been doing work every turn. Or more importantly, it's probably the Loyal Subordinate, which I happily play in both versions of the deck, which that Loyal Subordinate has that Lieutenant ability, 2 and a black, and it's 3/1 Menace. And I believe at the beginning of your combat phase, if you own your commander, each of your opponents loses 3 life.
Oof.
Each of your opponents loses 3 life. That's 9 cards.
9 is so many.
Yeah. Alec, that has won me games. And I should say it's won me games. It's won me a game in particular. I was playing a game in a Discord community, and in that game, this one individual got an Elvish Piper out early. They had gotten a Burgeoning, and like there's a green enchantment that lets you play lands all from your hand, but you have to discard your hand. And I remember the art, but I don't remember the card itself. It's like a land something, and it just lets you spill all your lands from hand. And they were playing a commander that says drop to 7 at the beginning. Demacia.
Oh,
I don't know.
Damia, the Gorgon one.
Yeah,
right?
Damia the Gorgon. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, this person was like just way ahead of everybody. And what I really like about the Florian deck is it tends to stay pretty small. I'm not building a lot of permanents. It doesn't look very big and threatening. I'm not putting out a bunch of unwinding clocks or enchantments to boost all my mana, or, you know, I'm not like building a system. It relies more of maybe like a burst approach to generating mana and generating effect and winning the game. And that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, of course. But the hope is that, you know, I'm keeping a low profile. You know, it's like what you see is what you get, what's on the board. The problem is that Florian lets me kind of pull, you know, something from the big bag of tricks, which has been incredibly useful. Well, in this one game, I thought I'm going nowhere. Coma comes out, the coils are out, and coil after coil is just tapping down Florian, tapping down the Loyal Subordinate. I can't attack anywhere, but the Loyal Subordinate continued to trigger, and I got to look at some cards, and I pulled a Disrupt Decorum, which sent this like massive board state, Coma and all his coils, and, you know, all the other Praetors on that person's board, sent them all at my other opponent, killing them. And it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible just to watch, you know, all that power just be used, you know what I mean? And to do my bidding, you know what I mean? Like, to remove a problem. And of course, that's the power of Goad, of, you know, which we know. It feels like most people know and are familiar with and love or hate it. I felt it was incredibly fun to just use what was sitting there, use what people were afraid to use. Oh, I got to stay back and block. You know, it's like, no, you don't. Let's just keep swinging.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I'll make that choice for you. Yeah. I've always been such a big fan of Disrupt Decorum. Sometimes it ends up being like almost a one-sided board wipe for 4 mana in red, which, so good.
Yep. In one game, I watched as I cast Disrupt Decorum, my opponents having to kill each other in order. They just killed each other until one person was left. And then I just finished that person off because they were tapped out. You know what I mean? It was beautiful because I watched as they just, I'm like, kill yourselves for me, fight, fight. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I was just eating popcorn the whole time.
So
And
good.
I turned on my OBS layer to like me just eating popcorn. You don't even need to see my board state, you know, just relaxing and munching on some chocolate or popcorn. I was so pleased with myself. And that the deck also has some fun tricks that I like to play with it. If I'm not gonna disrupt decorum, I'm gonna try and steal people's creatures. So an early iteration of this deck had more stealing on board.
Okay.
I built it. Actually, this deck was kind of like a forced combat, and I didn't know much about disrupt decorum at the time, and that was just kind of starting out. That was new in the deck. Carter wasn't yet in the deck list. And I was playing like Mass Mutiny and a few other cards that just kind of stole one or two creatures, like your highest power creatures. And it was a blast. I loved it. I love, again, exploiting the fact that people are being a little too nice and not attacking with their things, or the Timmies and people that want to, as I say, or the Timmies or Tammies that want to, you know, want to have like big creatures on board. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to use your big creatures too.
Yeah.
And so I would start stealing them and using them. One favorite game of mine was one of the first times meeting Deanna. It was actually during one of the very first Cleve EDH stream.
Nice.
And
yeah.
I was like in the audience and I was like, Bobby Christine, can I get on the second game? And they were looking for someone because Katie Karloff had to step out for the night to take, you know, to go back to life. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to play. So I brought my Florian deck and I cast this Tyrant's Choice card, and it's a 1 and a black sorcery that says Will of the Council. Starting with you, each player votes for death or torture. If death gets more votes, each opponent sacrifices a creature. If torture gets more votes, or the vote is tied, each opponent loses 4 life. So usually you cast this when people have some, you know, everyone's got their commander at least on board. And most people, you know, you don't have to sacrifice at all. It's not like you have to play along, but you get a vote, which feels...
Right.
deliciously unfair. I usually use it as a moment to kind of convince people to take the damage. But that night I remember saying like, you should all sacrifice a creature. And when I said that, they all were like, I don't know, we don't want to let Florian see some more cards, but we're like, I don't want to sacrifice either. So they took the damage, and it was great because I then cast Mob Rule, stole the Eldrazi from Deanna, stole the all big slam, and they could have sacrificed it. That was the best part. I was like, you could have sacrificed these creatures, but instead I will use that power against you. And I got an even bigger dig. So it felt so incredible. You know what I mean? Such power. Like holding onto that card that when I was playing the Tyrant's Choice, holding onto the Mob Rule was such excitement. There was so much excitement in me because I was like, oh, say no. Like, you know what I mean? Like, take the damage. I want you to. Like, let the greed happen. And so it was perfect. It was a perfect moment. So
that is so
the deck
good.
wins that way. Yeah, it's so great. And it didn't have some of the Torment of Hailfire cut ribbons approach to winning the game, and that was one of its early weaknesses. I was relying too heavily on everybody's board. So I put in something, you know, a system in which to like, how can I get a lot of mana? How can I get a lot of, you know, value from doing some operation in the game, right? Because we all want to run the, as Bobby Christie calls it, the 2022 value engines.
Yep.
You all want to run a value engine. And the value engine that popped up in the deck was the Waste Knot that I was talking about before, and Wheels. And, you know, so I'd play a Magus of the Wheel, then drop a Waste Knot, and as I sacrifice the Magus and we all wheel, the Waste Knot says whenever an opponent discards a card, we get the mana, get a zombie, get a card. And so I used to just kind of clean up there, as I mentioned before, get all that mana. And then I started losing to more combo people, and they would just kind of get the combo, and I couldn't, you know, I could do a big cut, or I could do a big ribbons for almost half everyone's life. Look at more cards and kind of get a nice something. But I wouldn't finish the game, and I thought, okay, I'm losing to these combo decks that kind of have consistent power, consistent combos, and that's when I added the Underworld Breach to the deck, which I was like, this is ugly, right? I just, as I played it, I'm like, this card is broken, right, everybody? I was like, we're all in agreement. As I continue to cast, the same card out of my graveyard, I would cast Burning Inquiry, and Burning Inquiry is a 1 red spell that says each player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random with a Waste Not out. I was like, and an Underworld Breach, and I had a Burgie out too. So the Burgie's sitting out there, and she says whenever you cast the spell, get 1 red mana. So Burning Inquiries all night long, folks. It's free Burning Inquiries. And so it was pretty gross. And then everything going in my graveyard, 3 cards is the magic price for Underworld Breach. So it was good. Like, I could keep doing this all night long. I'm like, isn't this broken, everybody? Isn't this wrong? And everyone was like, no, that's all right. That's just a game of Magic. And I was like, oh. Oh, okay.
It feels like it feels broken.
Yeah. I thought I'm becoming the villain. That was a moment where I stepped into the villain role and realized, oh, no one actually really hates me doing this. Like,
right, yeah.
No one really hates me.
Just doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised. This is why I love doing Commander deck interviews, is like just looking through the deck list. Like I see all the cards in here and I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that these cards are in here. But then when you get into the intricacies of like Tyrant's Choice combining the sacrificing with versus Loss of Life, like you either get a bonus to Florian's effect or you can do like a mob rule or something and take advantage of it either way. Like, everything you were just talking about, so many little pieces here and there that fit into all of the things going on really well. Is really cool. And I like any deck that is playing the like Fervent Mastery type cards where you're like tutoring, and anything discarding at random I always think is fun to watch and see what happens.
I have gone back, I have put in tutors, and I realized so I've gone back on tutors a little bit, and for the budget deck I put a Fervent Mastery, which is search your library for 3 cards but discard 3 cards at random. And I've got, of course, a Demonic Tutor and a Proxy Vampiric Tutor in the other deck. So that deck is just like gross, as we like to say, gross when we want to talk positively about how powerful something is. But you're right. Yeah, I decided, I was like, I should put a tutor in here because occasionally I want to be able to do it. I was like, and I realized that sometimes it's helpful to kind of end the game, to have some additional, like 1 wild card in your deck that can do that. So I have kind of gone back a little bit. And Fervent Mastery, you're right, it's kind of fun and flavorful, and that's why it's more casual. I'm willing to let cards get exiled. I'm willing to potentially discard my win condition to the graveyard. It's totally fine. It's all right. So, yeah.
I love it.
But, and I could budget deck play the Underworld Breach, but as I kind of mentioned, I feel like it sits in another category or class of like what could be exploited with it. And so I chose not to put it in there, but that's where I've been playing with Past in Flames, which makes all your instants and sorceries have flashback. That means they kind of, you can cast them 1 more time on a turn. And then I put in a creature, because I don't have a Yawgmoth's Will, but I put in a Magus of the Will. And I put that in there to kind of like almost approximate the Underworld Breach. But again, it's limited in power and scope, right? The Magus of the Will, similar to like the Magus of the Wheel, need to be out on the battlefield. They need to survive a turn, and then you may use their ability. And so I like to put, when I'm looking at lower power decks and why I was building this other one and why I like to have it, is to put some weaknesses in it that I know are obvious, right? Some obvious ways that I can't surprisingly win. It's usually sort of an Uno-like victory. I've got to lay out the piece, and then you get to see it, and then I get to do it. And that feels much more approachable and friendlier during a casual environment. Like, I'd like to give you a chance to possibly destroy it and not always have to have instant speed removal and your mana up at that time to stop me, right? Like, that's the kind of feeling. You have a turn before I win, so.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I find that just the interaction with you and your opponent's boards can be one of the most interesting parts of a game of Commander. I always love when the stack gets 2 or 3 or 4 or more effects and things on it. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind is, making sure that if your effects are on creatures, then you have like a full rotation before you can activate their abilities. And it gives kind of the opportunity for that interaction to happen. I think that's a really important part of it.
Yeah, there is an anger in the deck, which is always useful if you're a strong discard deck, which this deck is trying to cycle through cards. Florian doesn't discard the cards, but there are still like the budget version is looking to like ill-gotten gains, change of fortune, a number of these cards that are like draw some cards or discard some cards and draw some cards. So I am trying to definitely like take advantage of that fact. So sometimes anger's in the graveyard, someone sees it, they could remove it. It's like there's weaknesses and there's obvious ones that I know about that I'm purposely leaving in there because I like to have some weaknesses, and I try to stay away from like indestructible if possible. I try to stay away from some of these things when I can, because I think of or cast for free when you just have your commander out. A Deadly Relic is beautiful in a CDH deck, but I'm like, I think it's a little too much power over here. I think it's a little too much power, you know what I mean? Like in this wonderful deck. So I might do a Dark Dabbling, which I think I have in the deck, which is Dark Dabbling, regenerate target creature, draw a card, but it also has if there's 2 or more instants or sorceries, regenerate each creature, like each other creature you control as well. So it's kind of like a not great sort of heroic intervention, but it's a card that I put in here and it works pretty well. Like it works fairly often to keep my board up and running. So,
that's something I've been kind of leaning into a lot lately is like being intentional with adding more protection spells. That way you like it does fill some of the weaknesses your deck might have, but it just kind of like adds to that interaction thing. Like you're trying to destroy these things, I am prepared with some protection that I can use, heroic intervention style or whatever kind of other thing it is. I think it's just a little more exciting than slapping a lightning greaves on your commander and then nobody can touch it or something like that.
Mono black texture wouldn't, unless they can hit it with a Black Sun Zenith or a Toxic Deluge or something. But that's how it usually goes. It's like, sorry, can't touch it. And then, if you don't have the value engine to stop it, or I joke a lot of times with Bobby Christine is like, they had the protection for the protection. You know what I mean? Like, they have protection. I believe there was a conversation with Mara about Light Paws. And you have a Light Paws deck. And that Light Paws deck, once you get like protection from creatures, it's kind of like almost a GG, you know what I mean? Sometimes depending on who you're sitting across from. Because like the first time someone did that, I was like, oh, Light Paws, how cute, I'd love to see this. And then someone's like, protection from creatures. And I'm like, oh, my deck doesn't have any other way to hurt you. It just, lost the game. And so it's like, there we go. Now Light Paws, I'm coming for you. I know every single time what you're up to. So
it's kind of funny. I for Light Paws specifically, a person who I play with in our play group, Dan, he has an Avacyn deck, it's kind of like it's like revered and also feared in our play group, because if Avacyn comes out, everything's indestructible and it's hard to do anything after that. So purely because of that deck being in our kind of like local play group, everyone's playing Exile removal for the most part. So Light Paws actually like wasn't too bad because everyone's removal could already take care of it when it had indestructible or protection from.
Right.
I guess not. Protection in some cases does help against that, but so it's kind of funny how like some situations, things like that are interactable just based on who you're playing with, but I would be worried to pull out Light Paws in a random Spelltable game with people maybe I haven't played before.
I for a while there, I'd run into people that were playing a lot of Arden Rograk decks, a lot of swords of feast and body and mind and soul and heart and shield and Captain Planet. You know,
Yep.
they would play those. And my favorite card that actually worked really well in the deck was the Bloodthirsty Blade. It's an artifact for 2 that gives a little bit of goad.
Yep.
And equipped creature gets +2/+0 and is goaded. So I found after a while Shiny Impetus is a red enchantment that gets people goaded and gets you a treasure in the process. But it's 2 in a red. I found more often than I liked, the creature would get killed. People don't like having the creature goaded, and they don't like when you get treasure. And so they tend to kill that creature off pretty quick no matter what. And I've seen more people cast it on their own creatures nowadays, you know, to kind of like get a little treasure, and they keep it a little bit longer. But I removed that card, Bloodthirsty Blade slotted in, and that worked pretty well for a while. But I haven't been running into too many instances where I per se have to use that. I'm looking for like wide goad, you know, like hitting everybody with the Disruptor Quorum or with Carter, you know, an ETB. And then I'm with the budget deck. I also love the putting a little goad with Camber and the Rin, the sort of sub commanders to the Crimson Vow, Striffon.
Oh yes.
Commander deck. Those 2 with the like I make blood tokens. Camper's like I make blood tokens whenever opponents' creatures die. And I think Lorraine says I'm going to, you know, spend 2 and sack an artifact and go to target creature. And so it feels good. Like it feels like a good kind of alternate way to get that effect. So I've moved away. I mean, it doesn't quite give me the protectionless approach of the Bloodthirsty Blade. I just was finding myself like not using as much, or perhaps my meta changed enough that I didn't feel like I needed to put the Bloodthirsty Blade on everybody. It might come back. I haven't been fighting an Avacynth, you know. I haven't been fighting something like that. Yeah. That's hard. Indestructible is hard. It is hard to deal with. It is. So.
Yeah, and I do appreciate. I like playing against the Avacyn deck just because she's 8 mana, and it's very kind of like you can see it coming. And so it's always kind of a fun game of like, okay, who's got a counter spell or something to deal with it. And but on the other side of that, I have played against somebody who had it was like an all gods deck, so everything was indestructible. And after one game, I was like, I gotta be honest, like I didn't really enjoy playing against that deck. So if you could switch to another one, that would be fantastic. And now I know what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't pack your deicide and your farewell, or you know, I mean, and particularly if you're in a certain color, you can't quite get it. Like red, you can only get it if you damage, and then the card says like disintegrate, you know what I mean? If it dies from damage, exile it.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think and then I've only found in black there's a few. There's, you know, a lot of sack with a creature, destroy. There's like sack with a creature, or there's a baleful mastery now. There's a few more exile choices. My favorite flavor one, which apparently isn't in my Florian deck, is a cannibalize. It's 1 in a black, and it's like exile 1 creature. So your opponent has to have 2 creatures. You exile one of those creatures, and then you put 2 +1/+1 counters on another creature.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I know this card, but I like that. That's fun.
Yeah. There's Ashes to Ashes, which is 1 black, and that one is exile 2 creatures. You lose 5 life, which is good. You know, I use that one. It's nice to exile 2 creatures and have that, particularly in black. Baleful Mastery, which is like, you know, you could do 1 in a black and exile target creature, and then an opponent draws a card, so any opponent is nice. I like the cannibalized ones for flavor, and also it's surprising how often you can, when you bump someone's power up like 2 points, they somehow, you know, get qualified for a Denny's breakfast during the senior calling of the mob rule, you know, like when you're looking for something a little bit, they might change brackets, and now they're in 4 power, and all of a sudden you grab someone's loyal subordinate, or you grabbed some other creature. So there's surprising little effects sometimes. Or if you play another deck of mine, I play Shadowgrange Archfiend, powers get a little higher, and once that some creature becomes the highest power, the Shadowgreen Archfiend will want to eat it. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
so you can be playful and give those counters. Also, you can just, for fun, just give some counters and be like, here, lose that and eat this. You can also make your creature bigger if you need it. It's one of those kind of fun ways of playing with that. So
yeah, I've always been surprised at effects like they're kind of designed to be a little political, where you're like giving your opponents +1/+1 counters or something like that. And like I've always been surprised at how many situations there are where that will like turn the tide for your opponent on a different opponent. So you can just kind of like, here you go, and then they are starting to beat each other up a little bit, and you can just kind of sit back and watch. And yeah, it's way more interesting to play things like that and kind of like have the opportunity to do those things instead of just, here's Doomblade exile, or a Baleful Mastery, exile it, and now it's gone. Although Baleful Mastery has the draw card thing, but yeah, just like a murder, some effect is a lot less opportunity for some spicy interactions there.
I mean, yeah, I like it. It's that, Chaos Warp is a wild card and also creates an interesting moment. And so this deck definitely has a Chaos Warp because, of course, it's great red removal. Or red replacement. I shouldn't even quite say removal.
Yeah.
But I found that when I built the deck, I wanted something like that in a lot of ways. Like that, there was a choice where I was like, I can play Flame Rift, and I could probably be happy with just Flame Rift as a card to do that pre-combat damage. And if I wanted, instead of this Tyrant's Choice, I could probably just play Liliana's Triumph or Mastery, or the one that just says every player sacrifices a creature, or I could play the Turgid, something that just says every player sacrifices 2 creatures and get a similar effect with it. But the Tyrant's Choice felt fun. I like the games to it. I mean, I definitely included Wheel of Misfortune, knowing going into it that I'm gonna have to explain to people how this card works. But yes. I loved all the mini games that I was kind of like putting into it as well, like a little bit of Vote, a little bit of Disruptive Quorum, a little bit of this Wheel of Misfortune, because it's fun watching, at least for me, the ants kind of like figure out what to do. Like, how can I, I watch one player use Outlast to keep them from doing any harm whatsoever with their creatures, so they never attacked with anything. Another person did something else as well. They're like, I can tap down most of my stuff to do, crew vehicles that don't have to attack, or yada yada. Like, it's interesting watching people solve these problems, and I do like seeing that. I do like providing problems for people to solve and be this little Rakdos chaos agent, that which is present in the in that space. I used to have a Xancha in the deck, Xancha Sleeper Agent, because I love the idea of giving Xancha away. I recently removed it from both the decks, and the reason for it is that I in the similar way that like I would play Belby, some decks just wouldn't know what to do with the mana post combat. With Belby, you get mana if you deal damage to my opponent. So people that use the shock land, they would get mana post combat, or if they attack my opponents, they would get mana. But a lot of times the players didn't know what to do with the mana. In the same way, I sometimes found that people just didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to handle it, or like it wasn't in their plan. So even though Xancha was like 3 mana is kind of pricey, some people weren't able to do it. And then a lot of times I give Xancha to someone, and then next turn they drop an Ashnod's Altar, and you're like, damn it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, darn it. There's, shoot, or something. So it just never felt like I could get it. Now I've seen people, go for those infinite mana events. And so I think she would need to be in a deck that like hit infinite mana. Maybe she was more of like an end condition where I might have maybe I've removed her prematurely. I've almost talked myself into it. And I'm making lots of mana with like Jessica's Wills that I'm constantly casting. And I'm making a bunch of mana off of Waste Not black mana. When she ETBs and I give her to somebody, I can just kill someone outright, perhaps with all that mana that I've made.
That's true. Scourge Familiar can get you some mana. Yeah, that's a tough one. I hate things like that. It's so hard to decide because you can think of lots of cool situations where it does work and lots where it maybe doesn't work as well. And Yeah, it's hard to know
Yeah.
like how to weigh those against each other when you're deciding what to take out.
Yeah. I've been happy too with this deck. I'm willing to play some Soul Rings and Fast Mana in both versions of the deck. I was happy to add the Glasscast Heart to the
Yeah, I like
budget
that card.
version, which of course, your commander's a vampire because Florian's a vampire. You get a little blood token, and I've never hit that like 13 case of like blood tokens, but that's not something I'm really looking for. I think what's fun is though is I love the glittering stockpile. That was a recent addition, and I love that in a game. And happy to have like some alternative 3 mana rocks there, and early kind of just trash artifacts like our blood fountain. It's fun to have those for making 2 artifacts. They're kind of like making more permanents than they report it to be. It's a permanent that makes 2 permanents, and sometimes it's nice to have some extra stuff to throw around. In this case, a little extra blood on the floor to use for some reason.
I like it. Yeah, I like that too, how you have the kind of like blood token sub theme and then you also have Kirkesh Onaki Ancient, which is always a creature that I've enjoyed and thought was really cool. I think that those interactions are really cool in this deck.
Yeah, I learned the Kirkesh Onaki Ancient when playing on Scrap Trawlers. Lenny on Scrap Trawlers, I believe, used it. He built a Camber and Lorraine deck, so it's Rakdos colors, and was a big blood theme with cranial plating, and then a bunch of the Nadirs, the like Night Blades.
Ooh,
so it's like really leaned into tokens, and like tokens leaving and tokens enter. Leaving will do damage, and then of course make one of the Nadirs bigger. Anyways, the Kirkesh was in there. He shared it saying like this would turn any blood into the instant speed spell Thrill of Possibility.
Right?
Oh yeah. So essentially turned it into a Thrill of Possibility. 1 card slightly. Oh no, it is right. Discard before, draw 2 cards. Yeah. So it would turn anything into a Thrill of Possibility. A Thrill of Possibility on tap doesn't sound bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. For a deck that is looking to fill its graveyard or discard whenever it needs to. So getting a bonus card out of that process is really nice, because blood is, you're just swapping card for card and you don't get to see what you're trading for.
Yeah.
So it's not always the best. So it's nice to have. And yeah, the budget deck has like one of my favorite cards, which is for name alone, and creature type, Surly Badgesir.
Ooh.
The Surly Badgesir. It's a badger dinosaur. I don't know if I've ever seen one before, but it's like a Bone Miser's best friend, because it has similar triggered abilities that are not limited per turn when you discard cards. And the Surly Badgesir, gets cranky, and nobody, I think, like what was oh my god, 10 years ago? Honey Badgers, has that kind of like nobody, nobody F's with the Surly Badgesir. Yeah. Because it can fight cards, and it's kind of nice to have a little fight in the deck. I don't have dragons ETBing, and I don't have goblin bombardments, or I'm not doing a bunch of tokens. So this Surly Badgesir is kind of a pet card, and I love whenever it comes up, because I love to get a little value. I'm a big fan of discarding. If you haven't figured it out, I love to discard. I got back into Magic, at least buying physical cards again after I started in '93. Got back in during Shadow over Innistrad, and I was like, I love this madness mechanic. I'm like, can I discard? I just love discarding, like just kind of cycling and moving cards. It feels like I'm a shark, and I want to just breathe, and I just need more movement, more cards. Just keep giving me more choices.
I love it.
That's of course why I'm playing Florian.
Yeah, Florian is like right in that area, perfect for it. And I was gonna ask, do you have any other? We've probably talked about a lot of them, but do you have any other pet cards in the deck that you want to shout out besides the Honey Badger?
Honey Badger is the favorite. I've added Sticky Fingers to the deck, and I can't believe that common is a common. Yeah, with it being a red. aura, giving a creature menace. When they do damage, you get a treasure token, and when the creature dies, you draw a card.
It just keeps going. I love this card too.
Yeah, that card, gross, as one might say, is super powerful, but not overly so in terms of its approach of things. I mean, I think it's great and it's nice. It's an enchantment that feels like I can play it now. Whereas before I tried to play auras and it was like, oh, whoops, I just spent all that mana, to get this aura up creature, and I don't have all the protection froms, and now that aura up creature is just, gone. You know what I mean? It's just out of here. So that's a fun card. I love to say sticky fingers.
Yeah, that one.
I love to make jokes about sticky fingers. Just sticky fingers is always just a great time, and it's been I'm super happy to see like an aura that I can play that kind of solves some of the problems I think I've tried to solve with Florian is right. So if you think about Florian, early game, I like to get him out early. I recommend to anyone like Peat Bog or Sandstone Needle. These are these lands that come into play tapped, and come in with depletion counters on them, 2 depletion counters. And so I will play it turn 1, turn 2, untap it, play a land, and I can have my commander out in the battlefield. Because when you remove a depletion counter, you get 2 colored mana. But once you remove the second depletion counter, it's gone. The land blows up.
Yeah.
But it's like an early boost that I like for this deck, because eventually the board's going to get crowded. Florian has got a hit. So that's where, say, the low subordinates we talked about, or the Sticky Fingers, or a Basilisk Collar, which just got reprinted in the Commander Legends Boulder's Gate, and with a real with a basilisk, I guess.
Yeah.
Wearing it. So, no, I'm sorry if you're not a real basilisk. They're a basilisk collar wearer in the original art. Perhaps you are. Maybe I haven't seen your eyes yet.
It's
I'm
true.
Not sure.
Who knows what the top of that dog is?
For sure.
It makes sense though. Florian is like First Strike. I think does help against blockers sometimes, but it's definitely not as good as Menace or some kind of like evasive Death Touch, some way to get through like that. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, First Strike Death Touch is usually reserved for a green-black commander,
right?
And some, you know what I mean, like it's a nice little because most people get surprised. They're like, wait, First Strike Death Touch, they just get super surprised about it. And it's one of those where I'm like, no, you can block, and I feel fine with that. That I should have mentioned, that sometimes this deck suffers to token strategies, but I've tried to solve that with board wipes on the form of Chain Reaction. Chain Reaction is a 2 red, and it's like Scoot Swarm. How many Scoot Swarms do you have? You know what I mean? We're going to do 48 points of damage to everybody. I had another approach that was in this deck that I removed a little while ago, which was it was something Dreams. Let me take a moment. I think it was something Dreams. Devastating Dreams? No, it was I'm trying to remember. It was a red card, and it's an enchantment. It's like 6 colorless and a red, and it says whenever a creature dies, that opponent's controller, or the controller of that creature, loses life equal to the amount of. Oh no! Whenever a creature dies, and an opponent you choose an opponent, and they take damage or lose life equal to the number of cards they have in their hand. And that card, Vicious Shadows.
Oh, okay.
I used to do that too. And Vicious Shadows is pretty rough. If you wheel, then you have a Vicious Shadows, and everyone's got 7 cards in hand, and then you chain reaction like everyone's board.
Ooh.
You kill everyone outright. So I would sometimes punish people for their power that they have on board, but I removed it. It just felt a little too like creature dependent again, and it felt like it was kind of not always there for me.
Gotcha.
In terms
a little
of that value.
specific.
I'd cast it. Yeah, a little too specific. So that was a fun way, or possible another way that I thought about kind of destroying and taking out people. These days it seems pretty straightforward. It's like I'm mostly gonna look for a lot of mana win.
Gotcha.
And the Surly Badgesaur, definitely is an MVP, a favorite of mine, just for flavor. I love when he comes out and visits and chills on the battle. And he totally feels chill. Like, I don't get You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's not Emrakul.
Right.
He's just he feels pretty chill. I would
Yeah.
say previously the Bone Miser was maybe a little more, concerning. He's gotten high price, $9 lately because of all the conniving that all the young kids are doing.
Yeah.
In Japan these days.
Lots of little discardy things lately.
Yeah, they're snorting that Halo and they're calling up their
Yes.
Bone Miser, doing some Craigslist hookup with the Bone Miser to get the discards that they need.
Yeah,
So.
it works. It's kind of interesting to maintain a budget list in that way when a card spikes and you're like, oh man, like I swear it was budget.
It was. Yeah. There's one last card that I think I'd like to talk about, thinking about the kind of notable cards that focus on card draw, that give you like sustainable card draw. And while the deck is doing a lot of discarding and looking at cards, I think it's still useful to draw cards. And there's one of my favorite cards that came out in Eldraine. It's great if you've got like a commander focused deck where you're attacking with your commander. You're casting your commander and you're attacking with your commander. It's not just, a showpiece or like a casino owner coming over and shaking hands or whatever, just sitting on the battlefield overlooking everything. But if you've got a commander that's doing work on the battlefield, Tome of Legends is an incredible colorless artifact that is 2 colorless from Throne of Eldraine. When it enters the battlefield, put a page counter on it. So turn 2, I could cast it. Turn 3, I cast my commander. So whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on it. And then, so turn 3, Florian comes in, there's 2 page counters, and you can spend 1 and remove a page counter to draw a card. So it's like the Dragon's Horde, that card that whenever a dragon comes in, put a counter on it. It's a very similar card that's just kind of generically about commanders. And like I said, if your commander's doing work, if it's turning sideways, monetize it. You know what I mean? Put some ads on it. Write about it. Tweet about it, or whatever the Tome of Legends is in the Eldraine world. Hire a town crier to go around and sing the tales of your commander. So
I like it. Yeah, and then draw tons of cards. I think especially since Florian comes down so early, and you're just going to be attacking every turn. So it's like, I mean, this is just like we were talking about earlier with more interesting cards that are better than Phyrexian Arena in ways like that. Like, this will draw you a card per turn if you're, working for it a little bit and attacking and doing other things that your deck already wants to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because if Florian gets destroyed, exiled, you're going to have to... You'll bring him back, so that's another page counter on it, but someone did it during combat, so you've already gotten the attack trigger. So you likely have gotten 2 page counters on it, and then, then you're at least drawing 2 cards in the interim with 1 mana. The 1 mana cost per card is a good value for, whatever you've got left there, it's good. It's like, it delivers enough value, I find, particularly for its cost, and it doesn't rely on the meta of other people. It doesn't rely on... I guess it does rely on 3 mana in some way. I mean, 2 mana up front and then 1 mana every time. But I know Phyrexian Arena is 3 mana. Phyrexian Arena is a little bit more money for it. Limited to black. This is like kind of open for everybody. And if you're turning sideways, it's one of my favorites. It's just a nice little perk, for doing what you're doing. It's the stamp. It's the free sub. The free sub sandwich that we were talking about at the beginning. So, you gotta get those free meatballs.
Yeah.
When the meatballs are free, you say yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I love it. I want to know for both of these deck lists, which one in each do you think is like the MVP card of the deck?
Florian?
Yeah,
is it Florian?
Makes sense.
Yeah, Florian is definitely the MVP and the star of the show, as showcased by just even the picture of him on his card would be Florian. It's hard to say. I know that the creature that does the most work with Florian is the Loyal Subordinate. Loyal Subordinate is my top choice, right? It's like if I'm gonna make this deck whatever value, whatever price, whatever version of it, Loyal Subordinate feels like it has to be in that deck because of the lieutenant ability, because you're going to go to combat. I mean, you always are. And if you've got the two of them in play, you're going to get to see 9 cards if you've got 3 opponents.
So good.
So that card, and you haven't done anything. You haven't even lifted a finger, and the Loyal Subordinate has already done the work for you. So that's probably like my number one card, even for both the versions of it. I could say it's other things, but again, like that does some great work, and I've seen it do great work every game, and it's consistent, right? It's a permanent on the battlefield. Tyrant's Choice, it's for, it's 12-1 turn, Flame Rift 12-1 turn. Maybe you can cast it again, or, possibly with another card, but if Loyal Subordinate sits unchecked, also the Loyal Subordinate can attack. Like, it's got menace.
It's a 3/1,
sometimes can sneak in. Yeah, it can sneak in for 3 more points of damage. So you might not be looking at 9. You might be looking at 12. You know what I mean? Or 15 if Florian's going in with sticky fingers as well. Yeah, so it's definitely the MVP. I'd say I feel like I get to see a lot more cards with that card on board, and more ends of games happen if that card is out early. The unfortunate thing is that, it's on the same mana value as the commander, but I tend to, I'll lead with maybe the subordinate, then play Florian. Then that means, like, if you lead with the subordinate on 3, when you play the Florian on 4, you have 1 mana free, and then you can look at a top card of your library. Then you get to look at like 9 cards right away, and you haven't even attacked, maybe 12. So then you'll be able to either play another land to have 2 lands, like 2 mana, or you might pull out like important rock from your hand and play the land from your hand. So you might do different things with it. So I oftentimes lead with it versus like follow with it. But if you do follow with it, it's not bad either. I mean, you just tend to not have... What? I never thought about it out. I guess like Flooring on 3, Subordinate on 4, I guess you get about the same play. I don't know. It seems like I like to lead with it.
Yeah, they're both
get a little more value. Yeah.
I feel like it might depend on the situation. Maybe the Menace or the First Strike could be more useful. Or, sometimes Loyal Subordinate, at least when I'm playing my Rakdos deck, that this card also is fantastic in. People are just terrified of it because they know that the 9 life is huge. Maybe that can kind of like bait out a removal spell or something that you might not want Florian to get hit by, or the other way around. I'm not sure. Depends, I guess, on the situation.
Yeah, some people don't know with that one. I guess there's sometimes the friendliness of commander. Sometimes people take out the commander knowing that, well, that just stops you for a little while versus removing or exiling a piece on your board, right? So sometimes I think like people are being friendly when they remove your commander versus removing that, like the Neheb Dreadhorde Champion or even the Eternal, either one of those. Mean never to see them again is a difference sometimes versus like, well, I gotta wait till next turn, 5 mana or 7 mana or something. So
makes sense.
Yeah, it is good though to put out stuff that is tempting. So Loyal Subordinate, I don't mind. I'd rather they take out the Loyal Subordinate and then Florian can keep on trucking. Just let me look at 3. Don't let me look at 9. That's gross. Yeah, definitely take out the Subordinate. It's fine.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, I mean I would be like, it's 3 or it's 12. Which one would you have? But put it that way, because it's like, well, wait. I guess it could be just not. It could be 9 damage or 12 cards. I don't know. Or 3 cards that I get to look at, or just 9 damage total. 3 cards I get to look at. That's not bad, right? 3 cards and I get to look at it.
Right.
3 damage.
Don't worry about it.
1 person gets 3. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's too complicated. Just say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that's definitely MVP at that time.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Cool. I like that a lot. I think it's probably the MVP of Rakdos. Also Belby. That I'm just always surprised that it's 3 life each opponent on a creature that is pretty strong on its own. I like that card a lot.
Yeah, there is one other fun card in there. Acidic Soil.
Ooh.
And Acidic Soil is 2 and a red. And I realize this one is late game. I love this punishment because sometimes it kills me. And as a Rakdos player, I love it when we all die at the same time.
Yep.
It's sort of like a tiny orgasm, you know what I mean? Or whatever. It's an orgasm, la petite mort, you know what I mean? Like we're all a little death. Acidic Soil does 1 damage to each player for each land they control. Nice. You know what I mean? Like right near the end, it's like, wow, I've got 16 lands. I ramped forever. And it's like, yeah, I'm so happy for you. Again, I'm rewarding you for your efforts by sending you to the Elysium, to your afterlife of rest and relaxation, where you no longer have to toil in this world with Avacyn and other heroes that stand in your way.
Yeah, it's time for the game to end. So your 14 lands you have out are now going to deal 14 damage to you.
Right,
I like
exactly.
that.
Solemn Simulacrum, it helped you so much, and now in your value engine, and now you will be put to rest with Solemn, which I'm so happy to do.
Yeah,
so happy
I'll
to
gladly
do.
oblige.
Or have my friend do. Yeah,
I like it. Yeah, I don't think I've seen Acidic Soil before. I might have to consider this one for some of my decks. Yeah, I like that card a lot. That's really cool. Anything that punishes landfall decks, I'm all here for.
Yeah, I try to punish as many people as possible.
Yeah. I feel like there are a few strategies that they're just like so strong on their own, no matter what the commander is or what the deck's doing. That I love punishing decks like that. Like landfall decks are one. I think graveyard decks are another one, even though I play them all the time too. Always happy to exile someone's graveyard. So we have gone through a few kind of like stories that you've had for cool in-game moments when you've been playing this deck. Do you have any others that you want to kind of like go through as we head towards the end of this episode?
Yeah, there was one other game, one of the first few games that I was playing with this deck, and it was definitely the more I'm going to take control of your creatures and win the game version of it. And that approach worked pretty well, except I found out one day about Teferi's protection.
Oh yeah, sad.
I had hoped to grab an Avacyn. That's what your mentioning of Avacyn reminded me. And I was playing with Bobby Christine and Anthony, ListenerElf, and Anna, MTG, on Twitch. And we were playing, we were playing, and I remember so happy. I was like, oh, these big, wonderful, strong creatures that you're all playing. And I'm getting excited for everybody. That was the best part about the deck when it was early. Like, I could steal creatures. I get so excited. I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. Everyone like, oh, no, not Avacyn. I'm like, that is so great. Make her stronger, make her bigger. She's so wonderful. I'd be this is cheerleader the whole game. I was cheering people on, and they're like, what is, maybe they weren't going like, what is going on? Maybe Lynn is just really excited for me. But I was really excited because it was like Mass Mutiny was coming, and like, more goat effects were coming that whole time.
Beautiful.
And I remember Anna just shut that all down with a Teferi's protection, and she disappeared, and like they couldn't, attack her, and it ruined my entire plan, and it all fell apart. And I think I got eaten alive because my plans and schemes were exposed. But it was still a wonderfully memorable game that included an Avacyn that came, that I was previously swinging with. I swung with a Kalia, and then I was hoping to swing with an Avacyn, and then lost out on my opportunity. But still, super memorable moment to just die. Again, torn apart, and my robe exposed in the middle of the Colosseum. For everyone to see, I was just a trickster that was putting them all against each other.
I love that. That's exactly what we were talking about earlier with trying to create a cool story out of your game. Like that's it. Like that situation. And also just like having little goat effects here and there I think are so fun, because you do get the chance to like hype up your opponent's boards, and they have no idea. You might be hyping them up for a totally different reason than just for them.
Right. Right. Yeah. Definitely. I love to do that. And I also love to do that because people are like, I don't trust you. Why should I hit you? I'm like, come on, hit me. Hit me. Do it. Because like it'll advance the game state. Do it. And then they go, I don't know. I'm going to go somewhere else. Like you're a little too eager sometimes.
Too suspicious.
Surprises people. Yeah, they do. They get a little worried in some cases. So I think hyping people up is a fun kind of meta, way to play it. And it's also just great for people to be hyped. I mean, it's great to it's good to be excited about the entire experience. even if
Yes.
Ulamog is staring you down or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
You gotta look on the bright side when you're looking at an Ulamog.
The
Sweet.
shiny of it. The game will be over soon,
Yep.
Dot.
We're doing it. We've done it. We have I've got one last question for you, and it's what advice would you like to give to people who maybe have listened to this and are interested in building a Florian deck, or maybe have a Florian deck and want some advice? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I definitely would say, I guess it depends on what level and where you want to play. Right? I think that can influence it. I think if you're looking for some high-powered value engine driven experience, EDH rack and its kind of initial list is really great place to start. It's going to give you everything you need to be competitive, perhaps in your local store or whatever your meta is. But if you're interested in the deck list that I have and take a look at, I would definitely just review them. I think the biggest thing that I would say with Florian is this. Look for anything that does pre-combat damage or combat damage to your opponents. That amplifies it, that performs it, that does it, that's repeatable, at whatever speed that you need or whatever burst you need. So there's going to be new cards in the future after the recording of this and the newer sets that are going to do those things. And you'll find those cards will probably be better than some of the ones that, I have in my deck. So I think anything that does that does damage, causes loss of life, and you can amplify it, go for it. Find it, put it in there. Because really, you're just looking for anything to happen pre-combat, combat, before you move into the post-combat, where Florian will trigger and then let you look at the cards. And then from there, you just got to figure out how you want to ramp, what you want to ramp into. And likely, you're just going to have some of these damage effects, similar to Belby, which has almost a similar list if you look at some of the black cards, deal X damage per turn, X, that type of thing. So just look for those. That's the core of it. And once you kind of get the wheels, I feel like that's the bicycle, or that's the engine. Once you get that kind of moving in the right path, then you can start figuring out what you want to throw in there. Because really, then you just got card visibility. You're getting to yank a card out of 12 cards or 3 cards or 24 cards. And from there, what do you want to do? Do you want to summon Vecna? Do you want to amass Voltron? What do you, at that point, it's up to you. And I think you get to do it without tutoring, which does make it can give someone a little bit of a feeling of I can be, I work for this versus I cast those spells. I mean, that's working for it too. But you can kind of get away with perhaps some combos without feeling as much guilt. Or at least I did for a little while. So,
I like that. I kind of like how open-ended it is too, because when it comes to dealing damage in those ways that Florian needs, there's so many options for different cards and creatures and effects to do that. So I kind of like how open-ended that is, so you can kind of customize it. And then also just like you were saying, the win conditions, the things you're trying to find to assemble your victory once you've got your damage Florian effects going. Also super customizable, which I think is really cool. So you can kind of make it however you want it to be.
Yeah. My only wish is ever that if Florian could somehow non-randomize and put things back on the bottom in order, because I was I always wanted to play Grenzo Dungeon Warden and be brought you back. You know what I mean? But it doesn't quite work. The Grenzo Dungeon Warden will have to be in some other deck in the future that I've yet to make. But my Rakdos love letters that I write to each of my commanders. Dear Grenzo, call me if you're listening to this. Okay.
I totally understand that. I'm also a big Rakdos person. I've got quite a few that I just love. They're so good. Red and black.
How many do you have? How many Rakdos decks you got sitting around?
I think I have 3.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I was thinking about Kalain Reclusive Painter earlier, who's a treasure commander, which in the last just 2 sets alone has been totally overhauled. But Sticky Fingers is a really big one in that deck too. I really like Sticky Fingers in that.
Yeah. And then are you bringing in how else are you bringing in treasures?
I can definitely show you the deck list. I have like
Sure.
36 cards ish, something around there that just like make a treasure in some way.
Wow.
And
Wow,
it's really fun. So yeah, it's good. So Kalane is the one where when you use treasures to cast a creature, it puts +1/+1 counters on the creature equal to the number of treasures you used. And there's some spicy things you can do, like creatures with improvise. You can tap the treasures to pay for their mana cost, so you don't sacrifice the treasure, but you still like use it to pay, so it still gets the +1/+1 counter. Yeah, and then there are ever increasing like big dragons that have flying and love to have counters, like Goldspan Dragon and the new ancient, the red one, ancient something dragon. Bronze dragon, something like that.
Bronze,
yes. It makes 1 billion treasures. That's probably going to be like the best card in the deck now. So today was a blast. Thank you for letting me ask you a bunch of questions and chat about Florian and all the cool things that this sexy vampire can do.
So sexy. Florian is like a rock star in my mind. If it's sort of Bobby Christine cheer him on whenever he plays Florian, like a rock, because I've always thought of him as kind of a rock star.
Yes.
In my head, it's like Anne Rice's novels. Lestat, I think, comes back in the third story as like a sort of rock star vampire, and I didn't read that one, but I watched the movie of it. But anyways, I thought of that as like, he kind of pictured to me in that photo specifically. It feels a lot of what is it? 9 Inch Nails from one of their first albums, God Money, walking over the backs of the bruised or whatever, of the poor. It's just like it just gives me this feel of like the trying to be of the people, but really being this jerk awful character. I don't know. That could be like a Paris Hilton of the 90s or something like that. So I play it up. You know what I mean? I try to be an awful villain when I play it, because I will only accept that as the character for it. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, you got to get in the mindset of the character that you're playing this deck around. So yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. Well, this has been an amazing time. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. And we hit some topics that I loved, that I think that I love talking about things like that. So so I appreciate you for all of that. And and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome, Alec. Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. And so anyone listening, the episode description below, I'll have all of Lynn's links and content and things like that, so definitely go check those out. And is there anything that you want to say to kind of plug, or anything else you want to throw out there before we wrap up the show?
Nothing at all. I've said so much, probably too much already. But thank you, everybody that's watching and listening. Have a wonderful day.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good. Welcome to the Faerie Conclave. Thank you all for listening, and I hope that we will see you again next time.